The grand ballroom of the Harrington Hotel had never looked more intimidating. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and the soft clinking of champagne. Glasses filled the air with a kind of music that only the wealthy seemed to understand. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments where in the world are you watching from. Daniel Mercer stood at the entrance in his best suit, a 5-year-old navy blazer that still held its shape. If you didn't look too closely, and reminded himself that he belonged here just as much as anyone else. He had been invited after all. His company had won a Regional Innovation Award, and this gala was the reward. He straightened his collar, took a breath, and walked inside. He was a single father of one, a man who had spent the last 6 years building a small tech firm from a cramped apartment while raising his daughter, Emma, on his own. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but he was proud. And he had learned long ago that dignity wasn't something you purchased. It was something you carried. The seating arrangement placed him at table 7, a round table near the center of the room, where several well-dressed guests were already seated, sipping their drinks and exchanging the kind of easy laughter that comes from a lifetime of comfort. Daniel pulled out his chair and sat down with a quiet smile, nodding politely to the man beside him who barely looked up. Across the table, 2 women in designer gowns whispered to each other behind their menus, glancing at him in a way that wasn't subtle. He had seen that look before. It was the look that sized you up and found you lacking. He focused on the menu and decided he would simply enjoy the evening. Then the room shifted. A murmur moved through the crowd like a ripple across still water, and Daniel looked up to see a young woman walking toward his table with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need an audience. She was beautiful, that was obvious. But what struck Daniel more was the uncertainty in her eyes, the slight tension in her jaw that told him she was doing something difficult. He recognized it immediately because he had worn that same expression on his first day pitching to investors, who had already decided to say no. The woman was Vivian Harrington, daughter of the man whose name was on the building, granddaughter of a legacy worth billions. And yet, as she approached table 7, the guests around Daniel seemed to pull slightly inward, as though the seats beside him had suddenly become undesirable. One man shifted his chair. A woman picked up her clutch and moved it pointedly. The message was unspoken, but completely clear. Nobody wanted to be the one sitting next to the unremarkable man in the old navy blazer. Vivian stood at the edge of the table, her eyes scanning the available seats, and Daniel noticed the moment the room's silent judgment landed on her too. He watched the color rise slightly in her cheeks, watched her chin lift just a little too high, and he understood. She was not frozen from arrogance. She was frozen from loneliness. He knew that feeling with his whole heart, without standing, without making a scene, without any performance whatsoever. Daniel simply looked up at her and said, "You can sit here. She's with me." It was 5 words spoken in the most ordinary tone imaginable, and yet the table went completely still. Vivian looked at him, really looked at him, and something behind her eyes softened in a way that no amount of wealth could have. Manufactured. She sat down beside him. They talked through dinner with the ease of 2 people who had nothing to prove to each other. He told her about Emma, about the award, about the years of quiet work that had led him to this room. She told him about the pressure of a name that preceded every introduction, about rooms full of people who saw a fortune before they saw a face. By the end of the evening, the whispers had not stopped, but neither of them was listening anymore. Daniel drove home that night, loosened his old blazer on the seat beside him, and thought about Emma waiting at home with her grandmother. He would tell her tomorrow that the bravest thing a person can do is make someone feel seen when the whole room has decided to look away. True strength never announces itself. It simply shows up, pulls out a chair and says, "She's with me." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness True Stories, for more stories that remind us what it means to be human.